In this section of the communication training, I'm going to cover personality types. Now, everyone at one point or another have probably taken a personality type exam. Maybe when you were in college, some people even high school. Definitely for work, a lot of employers now are requiring people to take personality tests because a lot of jobs require a certain type of personality. And for you, it's a certain success ratio fitting you into the right job or finding whether you fit into what they want. Because every company is different. Now, think about when you're communicating or talking to people. This can be very valuable in understanding how to handle somebody and what best fits them. And this is at every stage of the communication process. So, I like to think of personality types as colors. That's what works for me. I've been training this for 10 years. I've been doing it for 10 years. And one thing I want to tell you is for me, it's second nature. For you, it's not going to be. It's going to be one of those things where you're going to go through this training, you're going to apply it, you're going to do the best you can. I don't want it to be something that holds you back where you feel like, oh gosh, I'm getting the wrong personality type, or I need to really figure out where this person sits as far as their personality type before I move on. This is simply a guide. Even if you get it wrong, it's not a big deal. But as you get better at this, it'll be something that'll be very useful to you. But for now, just use it as a tool, use it as something that helps you, but don't let it stop you. So, the 4 colors that I like to think of, they're reds, blues, greens, and yellows. Now, reds are what I like to call controllers, drivers. One thing I'll tell you is a lot of people think of the word controllers and they think like that's like a bad thing because no one likes to be controlling. But it's just a descriptive term. They're the people, usually the leaders. They're the ones in control of situations. And you know what? We need that. Think about when you have a group. If there isn't somebody in control and somebody leading the charge, you have chaos. And a lot of times you have inefficiencies. So we all like to be led by somebody when there is somebody that is the appropriate person to lead in that situation. Now understand, you might be a controller in one situation and not a controller in another. So there's nothing wrong with being a red. There's nothing right about being a red. It just is what it is. Now, some things I want to cover as far as reds, just to kind of give you a guide, because this is how you can spot reds and understand them. The strengths of reds: they're the best negotiators. They usually have lots of energy. They're the risk takers. They're confident. They're always the natural born leaders. They're action people. They don't talk a lot. They just do it. They're independent. Now, as far as weaknesses, they tend to have a big ego. They can be domineering, and they can be really hard to teach and train. The next personality type are blues. Blues are the promoters, the talkers. You can usually spot these people when you're talking to them and you ask them a question at a party. They'll talk and talk and talk and talk, and they'll tell you your life story, and they're like your best friend. Usually they're the people that are the social butterflies. They're the fun people in the group. Understand again, you could be a blue in certain situations and not a blue in others. Again, this is a lot of times at a comfort level. But in the basic day-to-day life, the way people are, blues are generally the social butterflies, the people that are out there, that are doing things, pushing things. They don't think a lot, they just do, and they're super social. And I'm sure you probably have somebody in mind you're thinking of that fits into a blue. Let me cover some of the strengths and weaknesses of blues. The strengths of blues: they're excellent promoters. They're very enthusiastic, bubbly. They can be very motivating, convincing. They're usually the life of the party, and they're super creative. Weaknesses of blues: they tend to be unorganized, scattered, really poor on follow-up. Sometimes they exaggerate, and they can have a short attention span. Now, the next personality type are greens. And greens are really an interesting group, and they make up a lot of the population. These are your accountants, sometimes lawyers. They're the people, engineers, are the people that tend to analyze things. They like to spend time really thinking about what they're going to do next. When you're talking to them, oftentimes they are thinking about why you're asking them a question. It's almost like they're trying to figure out, okay, well, why would this person ask me this? Because they're analyzers, they're analyzing everything. As opposed to you're just being interested in them. You're just wondering, how many kids do they have? What do they do for work? But these people can really even analyze what you're saying. You have to talk very slowly to them. You have to be aware that they're going to make decisions very slowly. They're going to need a lot of information. And this group can be very powerful to work with if you know how to work with them and you know how to motivate them. Some of the strengths and weaknesses of greens. They're the most organized. They're great planners, very dependable, task persistent. They're great on follow-through, accurate, and they're great problem solvers. The downside or weaknesses, they can be perfectionists, they can be very hard to please, they tend to be naturally pessimistic on a lot of things, and they really have a fear of being wrong. Something to understand about greens, I want to leave you with, this group is powerful because they're organized, task-focused, they can keep everything kind of flowing, but they're also a group of people that if you don't make sure they understand what's going on in the environment, they tend to be the people who will get stuck and oftentimes get the label overanalyzers, or they're stuck in one place. They won't move beyond a point until they feel they understand something. So just understand this when you're moving forward with greens. You need to make sure they understand what's going on, they have all their questions answered, and when you do that, they'll be a very powerful group in your team. The last group are yellows. And yellows are the people that everybody loves. They're the nurturers, they're the helpers, they're the people that care the most about everyone, and that's why everyone loves them. They always seem to be the people that are interested in everyone around them, sometimes to their own detriment. This is a good group of people to include in teams because they love to be part of teams, they love to be a part of things, they like to help. Sometimes they'll want somebody to be successful more than they want themselves to be successful. This group is very much motivated by helping, nurturing, and making sure the people around them grow. Their strengths and weaknesses. Strengths of yellows, they're the best listeners, they're dependable, they're optimistic, really easy to get along with, team players, very, very patient, they're very supportive of others, and they're natural-born nurturers. Weaknesses. They sometimes can be overly sensitive. They can take things personal. And sometimes when people make excuses, they'll just agree with it, as opposed to calling them out on it. And because of this, a lot of times they'll get taken advantage of by other people. A lot of people will spot a nurturer and they'll take advantage of the giving side. And a lot of times, because they're very focused on helping people, they're not real goal-orientated. Now, the last thing I want to cover, and this really isn't a personality type, but I want to just address hybrids. What do I mean by that? Well, obviously, no one person is one color. Most of us are a grouping of the different colors, but we're definitely dominant in one, very dominant in a second one, and sometimes the third one we have a little bit, and then the last one we have a little. We have a little bit of all, but really what you want to focus on is the most dominant and the second dominant. So an example would be me. I'm primarily a red, and anyone that knows me knows that. I tend to be the controlling personality. I like to lead. I like to be number one at everything. That's just the way I am. And being aware of that in myself is a good thing, as well as people being aware of it with me when they're dealing with me. Even if people don't know how to deal with me, the fact that I know I'm a red helps me understand how I need to deal with other people. Secondary, I'm a blue, because I have a lot of that promoter, social butterfly in me, but it is secondary to the red. And when you combine that, I'm kind of like purple. And just be aware that people tend to be very dominant in one and dominant in a second one. And understanding this can help you deal better with them, because sometimes these type of personalities can be on one day, they can be really, I could be really blue one day and really red the next. And so it's something to be aware of, and it's something to understand, because if you peg somebody, say, as a nurturer, like a yellow personality, and they have a lot of analytical in them, and you're trying to provide information to them, and they're not making a decision and you can't understand why, well, it's because you didn't understand that they have a lot of green in them. So it is important to identify the dominant color and then make sure you start to look for hints of other colors. And oftentimes you'll find that they're dominant in the second one.